The question that I get asked most often is how to make it as a tech entrepreneur. And this question obviously cannot be answered in 10 minutes. It can't be answered in an hour. It can't be answered in a day. It takes a long time to get through all the details. But if I were to pick the smallest bits of advice to give my younger self, I would start with this. And that's that tech entrepreneurship is really fundamentally about a mindset. Tech entrepreneurship, and all entrepreneurship actually, really comes down to the ability to absorb failure. When you look at this graph that I've got here, what you see is what it feels like every day and every week and every month and every year and every decade. Things will go well, they'll go extraordinarily well, and then they will go so poorly that you will be set back so far, it will feel like you never should have even started this to begin with because it's so miserable. And this is a problem because this is what we like. What we want to be able to do is live a life where things just kind of work and everything is always going well, or if you get a setback, it's a small one. And the best way to understand this is actually video games. And the really terrible part about this, I feel, is that we are now training an entire generation with video games, right? And with these video games, what happens is each level is slightly more difficult than the previous level. And that's how you get something that looks like this. And we train ourselves like this, and even we train ourselves as adults like this. Because if you look at this slide, this is what a pay scale looks like in the federal government. So what happens is that you get to a certain place, and then you make a little more money by doing a little bit more, by studying a little bit more. And as you continue to do this and as you continue to progress, it feels like that continual improvement. And that makes it feel right. It's compatible with the majority of people. And this is why that government schedule is like that. Now, when you try to live that life where you have that kind of a feeling, and you apply it to entrepreneurship, you get these stats. 9 out of 11 high-tech venture-backed startups fail to produce a return, right? And the vast majority of small businesses fail within just a few years, right? And the reason for this is because we are trained to live our lives with that nice blue curve. This curve, it's not compatible with us. We hate it. And so if you want to go and do tech entrepreneurism, really I would say, if I were to pick just one thing, it's really about this mindset, being able to find the grit. And if you want to read just one book, this is the book to read. It's called Talent is Overrated. I'll have a bunch of other recommendations later, but if you just want to think about ever getting started in this, and this is a great community, the CWNP community, to get started in this. I'll talk about why. This is the one thing that you should read to prepare yourself and to help you think about whether or not you belong here. Now, if you get past that part where you can bring yourself and ready yourself to go and do this, the question is usually, well, what do I do, right? Because usually people come up to me and say, well, I don't have a good idea. And one of the things that I've realized after doing this a very long number of years is that it really doesn't take a really good idea. In fact, good ideas are all over the place, just like talent is all over the place. What is difficult is finding it within yourself to sacrifice all the things that are kind of superfluous and to dedicate the time and years to become an authentic master at something. And once again, this actually is really interesting from the CWNP perspective because a lot of you guys have done this already. You've done this to go and get the CWNE, right? And when you have a mastery of something, what I mean in particular to concentrate on, so when you think about this from the entrepreneur's perspective, concentrate on mastery not as saying, oh, I can wear my pin or my badge. Concentrate it in terms of how many of these nuances do you know? Because the more of these nuances that you know, that allows you to put together this list, right? And so people say, well, I don't have an idea. Well, you don't need an idea. Because if you go and you master something, for example, like wireless networking, like Wi-Fi, and you come up with a list of all these strange little things that you've noticed, eventually you will come up with something that looks like a list of all the impossible things, such as landing a rocket on its end. And once you have that, the trick is to break all of those things into tiny little steps. as small a step as you can possibly imagine. And the reason why this is important is because it turns that graph, which is incredibly painful, the graph where you have to sustain losses and hate this life all day, all night, into one where you get little bits of improvement. Because if you break anything that's complicated and anything that's hard into small enough steps, you can always make it into something that you can achieve. And this is the key. Being able to do that really makes all the difference. I use this video here to give you an example. The final move that you see here is an in-air 720-degree rotation with 3 kicks in air. That looks impossible. This child is 8 years old. How do you teach an 8-year-old person to jump, spin 720 degrees in the air, and hit 3 targets before they land? Absolutely impossible. Sounds as impossible in some cases as possibly, landing the rockets on its head. It's the same thing. Look carefully. Every single one of those moves builds on the next incrementally. The first hook kick leads to a second spinning hook kick, leads to a jumping spinning hook kick, which actually has the same rotation as the last kick. And by adding each one of those things incrementally, that's how you make this work, right? So it's about this concept of lather, rinse, repeat in the face of the constant adversity. But what's really important is being able to make those increments. So you go and you do whatever it is that you want. Remember I said you've got that mastery, right? You've got those nuances. You've identified all of these nuances. And what you want to do is work on those. Which one of these are a little weird? How can I make this a little better? Do that a lot, refine and polish that a lot, and most importantly, make small incremental improvements. Every single one of those incremental improvements will make you feel good. Just like going and playing Wasteland in 1980, or if you're kind of a young guy now, Animal Crossing or whatever, every level feels a little good. Well, every single time you find one of those little improvements, you will get the exact same effect. And so the idea is you basically need to work a lot, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. I don't think anybody that ever does anything entrepreneurial will say anything other than that. So there's a certain amount of sacrifice and a certain amount of gumption involved in all those kinds of things. But really, turns out that there's a very straightforward protocol, right? You're going to go and you're going to go and try to figure something out better than other people. And as people who are a part of the CWNP community, you've already done that. And because you've already done that, I'm sure you can think of little things that you've figured out as you've deployed all of these little Wi-Fi networks. With those little things, try to make them a little better. Maybe it's what I do, which is I go and I try to build software solutions for that. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be that you come up with a better process to deliver that as a managed service. It could be that you become a teacher and you teach people how to fix that little problem that you found. It doesn't really matter. All of those are entrepreneurial pursuits and allow you to become your own boss. And that's really what most people ask me, right? Most people come up to me and ask me, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to become my own boss, right? I don't want to go and work for someone else and have to, that's like the big deal, right? And they ask me, how do you do it? Well, it's really straightforward, especially if you're a CWE. You've already done this, right? And it's because this is a great quote. I want you to kind of look at this when you get a chance, right? And basically what this says is that, what really matters is the person that does the work. And as people who are CWNEs, the interesting thing is that we're the people that do the work, right? And one of the things that makes RGNet special, I feel, is that everybody who builds this software at RGNets is somebody who is a practicing elite level networking engineer. And because of that, we're the people that have the understanding of those nuances, and that's how we build things that the world needs, right? And everyone can apply this, right? So it's really about developing this mindset, right? Having this ability to say, okay, I know that this is going to be tough. So what I need to do when I'm trying to do something crazy or impossible is break that into those little things, right? Make sure that I have this ability to understand that's important, and you just crank the handle over and over and over again. I'll leave you with this simple way to practice. Go look up the Green Sally Up Challenge. People that work at RGNets practice that challenge every single day. In some cases, multiple times per day. And the reason for that is because that teaches you this mindset. Little things, one step at a time, and you can achieve the impossible. Thank you.